And just like that, we're together here again today for day 69 of 100 days of making comics. So I got a little bit of a late start today, that's fine. Resting up from my hard work yesterday. And that's sarcastic if you haven't watched yesterday's video. And so what I did was I had to call my mother and I got all ready to go. I walked around, get a little bit of exercise, talked to my mom. Not very long, 10-15 minutes, but that's something, some movement. And now instead of going back upstairs, I'm gonna go right to the car because we need milk and a few other things. From where? Target. Of course. Looking orange. Well, whatever, I'm back in the orange zone. Remember this? I just punched myself in the nose a little bit. Okay. Anyway, it's late-ish. It's after 6. As I said, I got a late start today. Did a few things in the morning. Did sit down to do some drawing. I'll show you that in a bit. I just don't happen to be there right now, so I can't. What did I do aside from answering some work emails and running to the store and all that stuff? I sat down, it was a little after 2, and basically from 2 to 6 worked on the standee. So theoretically that's 4 hours, but it wasn't a hard 4 hours. It's not like where I was stopping the clock every time. So, you know, maybe it was 3.5, 3:45, but it was 4 hours of my day where I just worked on the standee. I do have other things I need to do, but I decided to make it a priority, as I said, this week. Got to get the standee done. Today's Monday. I want to have it done. Ideally, I'd have it done Wednesday night, but at the very least, I have to have it done by late afternoon, early evening Thursday if I want to have it for the show Saturday. So, I did that, just fed the cats. I'm going to go catch up on some work emails and things like that, and then dinner, and then I guess, well, I'll definitely be doing my 30 minutes on the horror later. I may or may not go back to the standee. I'm not sure what else I'm going to work on, but that's where I am right now. And I'll show you what I did on the standee. I'm going to go in the other room. I'll just cut right now to what's on the standee. Yes, that. Okay, so here's where we're at overall after another roughly 4 hours put in. The main things I did were to ink these foreground buildings. I had roughed them in the other day. Then I roughed in, then inked all this rubble here, as well as put in the flat colors behind it. Then I created this car, which took forever. I stink at drawing cars, and I was trying to do a not real car. I've talked about this before, the sort of dangers of doing a not necessarily real world where I can get away with things that aren't realistic, but then I have to invent things. So it just looks like a regular old car, but it took way longer than I should have. And I actually duplicated this and put it over here behind the wreckage. And then I did all these little design lines of, you know, rubble and things like that. And look, a little bit of that. So I'm not done with the inks, but I'm quite close. I basically need to put a little bit more detail here. I just fed the cats. I don't know why they're meowing. Put a little bit more detail here. And then I need to go in with the fire and smoke and stuff, which I may or may not do in inks. I might just wait and do that in color. But I'm close to being done with the line. Oh, there's a helicopter up here, which actually I don't have to rough in, but I'll have to ink that. So if I go back to this today, I'm going to try to finish up what inks I have left so that from here on in I can just worry about color. It's about 9:30. Dinner has been had. Had in mouth. Yeah, I digested. You know how the body works, and if you don't, I'm not the one to learn it from. Let's see what happened on here. I can tell you, sneak preview, 30 to 45 minutes of work on the Horror A4. As promised, working on this top panel. Basically, I just created these chairs, this table, and this background thing. It's sort of half entertainment center, half thing. It's a nondescript piece of furniture that holds stuff. And then I also started working on the characters. They're too rough to leave as they are. I mean, they would be if I was... Yeah, they're super rough. I'm going for this kind of rough, so I will have to like tighten them up a bit. I still need to populate more in this room, but these were the major things I needed to get in there. And of course I have shirts and things and just background junk around them as well. But that was the half hour. Doesn't seem like a lot, and it wasn't, but it was a half hour or more. Question and answer time. Well, let's see what we got in the mailbag today. Here it is. As you can see, Mike Emeritz wants to know, how do you figure out perspective work digitally without a straight edge or ruler? Do you use a ruler on your Cintiq? Well, Mike, no, I don't use a ruler on my Cintiq, but thanks for asking. What most people would do would probably use Illustrator or Manga Studio or something like that have a lot of tools built in to do perspective. I use Photoshop 100% all the time for drawing, with very few exceptions. I say 100% all the time. 100% all the time when I'm working on comics. Occasionally, and not very often, I use Flash if I need to get something vectored or if I'm doing animation. But when I'm using Photoshop with my Cintiq, and for those that don't know, a Cintiq is a monitor that you could draw on with pressure sensitivity with a stylus, and that's how I do most of my work. And when I show you those screenshots, that's what I'm showing you. It's a monitor, but I draw it right on it. So I'll just show you how I do the perspective on a Cintiq digitally. Okay, so funny enough, I'm pointing my camera at the screen rather than just screen cap because it's quicker and easier. So this is the page I was working on. I just erased all the elements, and what I'll typically do is make a layer, use a bright color like green, and create a horizon line. For the sake of, like, normally I'll think about where it should go. Well, I guess, okay, let me step back. Before I do that, what I'll normally do is have a thumbnail of some sort. So in this case, let's say I have a person here, and they're like, hey, what's going on? I'm a person. I like to smoke cigarettes, even though they're bad for me, and I got a trench coat. And then I'm thinking that it would look cool if they were standing outside of a city. So, you know, I'm thinking the city's kind of like here, okay. But then up front, maybe there's some doorway they're thinking about going in. So this is like closer up, and there's some sort of doorway here, which means that there's a building. So even though there's a city in the background, there's something right here, right? Okay, that's perfect. You can't even see the person, can you? Let me move this over a little bit. There's the person I was talking about. Okay, so then I'll take that and make that 25%. Lock it, and that'll be my rough layer. Then I will go in and make a horizon line. And the way I'll do that is sort of think, this is all going to be straight on the horizon line. It's just flat on it. This, however, is going to need to go to the horizon. So I'm going to imagine the horizon line should be about here. And then when I want to figure out the vanishing point, I'll say, okay, well, this is going to be a straight down. It's not going to be 3 point. It's going to be 1 or 2 point. And if he's this tall, the doorway has to be taller than him by about, I don't know, a foot-ish. So that means that the height of the door should be about there. So then I could erase all this garbage. And then I will say, okay, and I want, let's see if it was here, if the vanishing point was here, how that would look. What I do then, oh, by the way, to get a straight line, if I want to draw a straight line, see how it's not quite straight, just hold down shift. Holding down shift is a big part of it. So shift gets you lines like this. Those are just little artifacts by mistake. But that also works on a diagonal, where you click 1 point up here, and then, again, imagine that's our vanishing point. I'll click 1 point up here, hold shift, click it again. And I can keep clicking it, and then I'll often, if it's not what I want, if it's not thick enough, rather, I'll click again right here, hold shift, and do it up there, and you get a little more consistent thickness. Now that's using a pencil, by the way. Using a brush is a little bit harder. And so I look at that and I say, is that the angle I want for this doorway here? Not exactly. I want it to be a little bit more of a shallow line. So sometimes, instead of picking a vanishing point first, what I'll do is I'll try to draw the line. So I'll say, I want it to kind of go like this. And then I'll go in and put a vanishing point there, rather. Then I'll erase all the other stuff. And then I'll check it and say, okay, well, here's the doorway. Oops. I'll say, here's the doorway. Bop, bop, bop. Yes, that works. I want it to be about that big, and it has a little, lip around it. And all this is done holding shift, once again, for horizontal, vertical, and otherwise. Works with the eraser, too. That's how I get those straight lines. So then, let's just assume I put the edge of the thing here. Now, I've actually started drawing on top of my horizon line, which I normally wouldn't do. But let's just let's erase all the extraneous lines, and then I'll make this its own layer. La, 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 la. This is more work than what I normally would do, but the main point is that this right here is our vanishing point on our horizon line. Drop this down to 25. Actually, I'll make it 50 so it's a little bit more visible, and I'll lock it, and then I'll put in a layer. This would be like my rough layer, which is what I've been working on the pages. And I will have brush, whatever, and then I will go in and do the semi-final or the final lines using shift to bring it to there. Now, if I wanted like some bricks here, I would do the same. I would measure, a 1/4 inch all the way down, let's say, with dots. These are not truly measured, but I'm eyeballing it. And then each one I would send. Now, in this case, the fact that it gets lighter on the end really works, because these lines closer to the camera, to the viewer, are going to be a lot darker than when they fade into the background. If I wanted them even, then I'd have to go back the other way or whatever. So then I do that, and this is the edge of the building, so then I would cut all that off like that. And then, again, if they're bricks, what I would normally do is make a separate layer and do a straight horizon line like that. And the reason I put it on a separate layer is because bricks alternate, so then I could erase every other one like this. And then do the same thing over here, whop, whop, and then erase every other one like this. There are other ways to do it. You know, this is just, by putting it on separate layers, I don't have to worry about being neat when I erase. And then I would merge those 2 layers down, and now I have a little brick layer. And then, of course, I could go in and put shading and dirt, and I could, you know, erase some parts here to make them look a little less perfect. But you can see how those bricks are in perfect perspective to this perspective line, vanishing point rather. And then the buildings that are in the background here, they're all on the horizon line, more or less in one perspective. I could leave them like that, or if I want a little bit more depth to them like this, grab the point here, bring it down, and then, you know, you get the side of the building there. Similarly, if I wanted a bunch of like lines, like for windows or lights or something, what I would do, I'm going to use an eraser, but it's the same principle, and bring them from there down. You know, again, this is sort of basic 1-point perspective, but you can see how it works. If I wanted something in 2-point perspective, well, here's the other technique, which I don't use as much. I used to use more, but I kind of got away from it, is I'll use a path tool, which is the lasso, but you could select it so that it's polygonal, probably mispronouncing that, lasso tool, so that you get these kind of lines like this. And the other thing you could do is, here, I'll just pretend like here, I wanted to bring this down. But the problem with that is you kind of have to make it a shape, and then edit, stroke, let's say 10 pixels, and there it is. And that gives you a really perfect line, which is the advantage of it. The disadvantage is that you have to make these whole shapes, and then I'd go in and cut that because a building is not a big triangle on the side, and then I'd drop it straight down, and you get the same basic effect by using the lasso tool. Now, if you're really good, you could do stuff like, you know, try to, see, I'm not doing it well. Well, this is just selection also. I have 2 selections. If I hold down Shift and make a 3rd selection, it'll keep adding to it. So, you know, if I did something over here, it would still be selected, for example. And then, oops. And then when I get something I like, let me back up 1 step accidentally. Then again, edit, stroke, 10 pixels, whatever. And those are like that. And that is a more accurate way to do it, but it's much more time consuming. There's a pen tool, which is probably the correct way to use it, but I hate the pen tool. I've used it a million times. People have told me it's better once you work on it for a while, but I've worked on it for a while and never got used to it. I pretty much hate it. I think it's the most counterintuitive tool that's ever been invented. And that's the reason also why when I occasionally get jobs that need things vector, they expect me to do it in Illustrator, but they don't care as long as it's vector output. I will do it in Flash because Flash is much more intuitive, where you just drop the lines point to point. If you want to bend them, you just pull it. There's none of that weird handle wiggle stuff. It's super easy. And I don't know why there isn't a program that lets you draw like that in vector. But I'm getting sidetracked. That's the basics of how I do perspective in digital on my Cintiq. I don't put a ruler on it. But there are rulers here that you can use. And there's also guidelines you could use. If I go up here, I could pull down, see that little blue line? And I could do the same thing over here. And you can do multiples of that. I could pull down more if I want. See? And then when you draw, it'll actually constrain it a little bit. Like, see how it kind of woggles when it hits it so that it's a barrier. I mean, I can force my way through it, but if you just lightly hit it, it actually stops a little bit. It's weird. I hardly ever use those. The rulers I'll use sometimes. But anyway, there you go. Happy to you. So again, that one came from little Mikey Emeritz, so I hope that helps you. And keep on drawing, buddy. One day you're going to do great. Those coloring books aren't going to fill up themselves. Okay, well, that's going to be it for now. I might do more work. It's 9:45, but I want this video to be over and done quicker. So I may or may not do more work tonight, but that is the end of the video for you. That is the end of the video for me. That is the end of this portion of the day. Today being day 69. And if today is day 69, well, then that means... Star Commander. Star Commander. We've got 31 days left. You've finally become part of the family, yawning at me. Fan. Probably not the way to do that.